Welcome. This week we're going to go over lessons 105 through 108. So as you have noticed these last few weeks, we've been doing some, I call odds and ends type of math where, before we were focusing on, ooh, we got to learn our double digits and all the different strategies for adding. So now we're learning, the greater than and less than. We're working with measurement. We're doing some fractions, a little bit of division. We're taking things that we've been learning and applying it in different ways. Well, this week we're going to do a little bit of graphing, and then we're really going to focus on some different ways for measuring. So let's go see what materials are needed for this week. You'll need the worksheets, some crayons, tiles, the centimeter cubes, your tangrams, the abacus, a business card, or maybe find out what the measurements are for a business card and cut out a piece of paper in that size. A piece of paper, a standard paper that's 8.5 by 11 inches, and your 4-in-1 ruler. Lesson 105, graphing. As you see, we're still working on those sums practice. So that's your child is still having opportunity to work on their addition, their 4-digit numbers, keeping those facts fresh. Okay, so today they're going to be working with graphing, and they're going to have to take a poll. They're going to have to talk to people to see how many pockets they have. And mind you, if you need to change it to something else, feel free to change it to something else. But for the most part, normally most people are wearing pants or they have a shirt or a jacket on and they have a pocket of sorts. Your child's going to find out how many have pockets. How many are have 2 pockets? How many have 5 pockets? Feel free to have your children call friends or family and ask about pockets, what kind of pockets they have. Or maybe you could do that on social media. You can take a poll and ask everybody, and your child can get the information that way. So there's a lot of different ways they can get information. This lesson is also where you need the crayons, and you probably want maybe about 6 different colored crayons, because then they're going to color in the data. So once they figure out how many pockets someone has, they're going to color that in. Lesson 106, measuring with inches. Look at the explanation at the very top of the page for you. It says, and I'm just going to read it, this activity helps the child understand that the measurement of an object depends upon the unit of measurement. So just like we talked about last week at that in the lesson about units of measurement, these lessons are helping a child see that their measurement is going to be determined by what they're using to measure with. So here we're going to measure with the tiles, which happen to be 1 inch long. Go ahead and look at the second page in the second picture. I just want to point out something because it was a little bit confusing to me. So I thought if I could point it out, it may not be as confusing for you. And like I said before, I have some spatial problems with seeing things. And so you may not have any problem with this. But in the second figure, well, actually, let's go with the first. In the first one, they're making a line as long as they can using the tangrams. So they have all the longest sides of the tangrams lined up. In the second figure, we're asking them to make the shortest line they can using the tangrams. So these tangrams are getting turned so that only the shortest side now is at the very top. Well, if you look at that middle, that second figure, it looks like a distorted triangle. And what I realized is it's actually 2 triangles. It's just the way they were turned and how they're connected to each other. So I just wanted to point that out in case you're wondering, like I was, because I actually thought they made a mistake in their printing. Then I realized, no, it was just I didn't see it at first. And I really like this activity. They're going to use measuring the abacus. This is where they're really going to understand that what we're using will determine the size of something. So here you're asking them, you're telling them that someone measured the side of the abacus and found that it was 19. Well, 19 what? 19 fingertips, 19 feet lengths, 19 inches, 19 centimeters. Like, what makes it 19? And your child's going to get to discover what it is, what was used. Was it centimeters or was it inches? And then the worksheet follows up by having items that were measured, but it doesn't have the unit of measurement. So this is where they're going to have to use some common sense in using what they've learned to apply for their answers. Lesson 107, paper measuring problems. So your child's going to measure a piece of paper. Now the standard measurements for a piece of paper in the United States is 8.5 by 11. You're going to model how to write the 8.5 since this is kind of a newer concept. But I really like this activity down problem 1. It says an insect walked around the edge of the piece of paper. So your child's learning about perimeter, but we're not using the term, and please don't use the term with them right now. But when you're saying the edge of the paper, you could say the rim of the paper because perimeter, I don't know, I find that that's really helpful for children who may struggle with what, when they see the word perimeter, what does that mean? Well, we're going around the rim, the perimeter, the edge, or like there's a fence, right? We're going around the fence. But like I said, I'm kind of taking this a little bit further. That's not what this lesson is about, but it is setting them up to understand perimeter when they get to it. Now, when they do this, they're going to have 8.5 plus 11 plus 8.5 plus 11, and then they have to figure out how to add this together. Those 1/2s might be a little intimidating to your child, but just remind them 1/2 and 1/2 makes what? Then go from there. Last lesson for this week, lesson 108, making rectangles with tiles. And just like the previous lesson where they're learning perimeter, guess what they're going to learn today? About area. But we're not focusing on the area aspect of it right now. Their main focus is that they're going to practice measuring in inches. Look at the top of the second page where it's showing an example for the worksheet, actually showing the answer. When it's talking about the square, they're talking about the inside figure that is made. The outside of the tiles are not making the square, but the inside of the tiles where they touch form a square. And they will be working on the perimeter, like how big is that square? So that's where it could get a little confusing. So I'm pointing it out to you that the square, there's 2 tiles and then 2 more tiles going up and then 2 more tiles over. They're going to count the inside of the square, not around the outside of the tiles. So the activity of making rectangles with 16 tiles is going to give them an opportunity to make different rectangles, different sized rectangles. There's only 4 possible ways they could do it. And then if you notice, they're going to see how many of those squared inches can fit inside. But we're not focusing on that yet, which is area, but we're setting them up for it. So when they get there, they're going to be a little bit familiar with what they're doing. And I think it will make more sense when they understand. All right, we have completed this week. I want to give you a heads up that next week, your child is going to need the geometric solids as well as the geometry panels. Now, for those of you that got the Super Saver set, those did not come in that set. So you're going to have to find something to use in its place, or you can call Right Start. You can order these. You hopefully could get them in within the next week, just depending on, weather or how busy they are. I don't know, but know that those are items you will need. Now, if you have magnetiles, I've heard of people who've used that in that place, or, as I've suggested in my level A class, even for the geometric solids, is maybe going online and seeing if there's patterns you can make into these shapes. So just a heads up. So you'll be prepared. All right. Well, join me next week as we go over lessons 109 through 112. Until then.